Good afternoon, this is Mathematics 9, Quarter 1, Module 2. The lesson is about illustrating quadratic equations. Specifically, we are going to discuss today solving quadratic equations by extracting square roots. Our concept: what are the solutions or roots of quadratic equations? The solutions or roots of quadratic equations are the values of the variable or variables that make quadratic equations true. We have example number 1. Determine the value or values of x to make the quadratic equation x squared equals 25 true. In this particular example, the answer are 5 and negative 5. One way of solving this is by using the trial and error method. You may think that if you are going to substitute the value of x to the equation x squared equals 25, we have 5 as the value of x because 5 squared is just equal to 25. Another answer is negative 5 because if you are going to value or to substitute the value of x squared in the equation x squared equals 25, and if you are going to square also negative 5, it will give you 25. Example number 2. Determine the value or values of x to make the quadratic equation x squared minus 64 equals 0 true. In this example, the answers are 8 and negative 8. If we are going to use again the trial and error, and we substitute the value of x, which is 8, to the equation x squared minus 64 equals 0, then we have 8 squared is just equal to 64 minus 64 equals 0. And therefore, it makes the equation true. Likewise, if we are going to substitute negative 8 to the equation, if you are going to square negative 8, we are given 64. And 64 minus 64 will give you also 0. Therefore, the values of x are 8 and negative 8. Sometimes it is difficult to use the trial and error method if you are given a quadratic equation of the form x squared equals k. So we are going to provide you another method that can be used in solving this kind of quadratic equation. So we have this concept. Quadratic equations that can be written in the form x squared equals k can be solved by applying the following properties. First property is, if k is greater than 0, then x squared equals k has two real solutions or roots, or x equals plus or minus the square root of k. The second property is, if k is equal to 0, then x squared equals k has one real solution or root. That means x equals 0. And the last property is, if k is less than 0, then x squared equals k has no real solutions or roots. The method of solving x squared equals k is called extracting square roots. Let us use the example given in example number 1 in solving quadratic equation using extracting square roots and not trial and error. So we have this problem: determine the value or values of x to make the quadratic equation x squared equals 25 using extracting square roots. So here is the solution. The given is x squared equals 25. We need to get the square root of both sides. So we get the square root of x squared and we get the square root of 25. Now please take note that if you are given the square root of or the nth root of a raised to n, that is equivalent to 8. Therefore, the square root of x squared is equal to x. And of course, the square root of 25 can be plus or minus square root of 25. Get the square root of 25, we have x equals plus or minus 5. Now this example, or this is an example of quadratic equation in the form x squared equals k, where k is greater than 0. So from the given, we have x squared equals 25, and 25 is greater than 0. So we expect that the answer must be two solutions. One is positive 5, and the other one is negative 5. Let us try to consider the next example. Determine the value or values of x to make the quadratic equation x squared minus 64 equals 0 using extracting square roots. The given is x squared minus 64 equals 0. We need to transpose negative 64 to the left side of the equation. And if we are going to transpose a number or a negative number, we need to change that to positive number. Therefore, we have x squared equals 64. And then after that, we get the square root of both sides. So the square root of x squared and the square root of 64 can be equivalent to x equals plus or minus the square root of 64. But we have the square root of 64. Square root of 64 is plus or minus 8. This is also an example of quadratic equation in the form x squared equals k, where k is greater than 0. If that will be the case, we have two solutions, and those are plus 8 and minus 8, or positive 8 and negative 8. Example number 5. Determine the value or values of x to make the quadratic equation x squared plus 6 equals 6 using extracting square roots. Alright, so let's try to have the solution. The given is x squared plus 6 equals 6. So what we are going to do is to transpose positive 6 to the right. So if you are going to transpose positive 6 to the right, from positive sign, magiging siyang negative sign. So we are given x squared equals 6 minus 6. And we know, if you are going to subtract 6 by 6, the result is 0. If we get the square root of both sides, we have the square root of x squared, and we have the square root of 0. Of course, the same rule applies. Then square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 0 is plus or minus 0. So the square root of 0 is actually 0, and there is no sign for 0 if it is positive or negative kasi nasa middle siya ng number line, so it cannot be considered as positive or a negative number. So we have only one solution here. This is an example of a quadratic equation in the form x squared equals x, where k is equal to 0. So, itong kaso na ito ay isang example na ang solution ay iisa lamang, which is equivalent to 0. Okay, so let's try to consider example number 6. We want to determine the value or values of x to make the quadratic equation x squared plus 49 is equal to 0 using extracting the square roots. Solution. The given is x squared plus 49 is equal to 0. We need to transpose 49 to the right side, not to the left, but to the right side. Okay, so it should be to the right. So x squared equals negative 49 because from positive 49, we need to change that to negative because we transpose 49 to the right. Then after that, we get the square root of both sides. So you are given the square root of x squared equals the square root of negative 49. Of course, same rules apply or same rule applies. So we are given x plus or minus the square root of negative 49. However, if you get the square root of negative 49, the answer will be no real solution. Kahit i-check mo po yan sa calculator, kunin mo yung square root ng negative 49, ang lalabas po doon ay syntax error. Alright? So, therefore, if you are going to get the square root of a negative number, it's not possible. So, the answer is no real solution. Always remember that if you are given a negative number and if you get the square root of that negative number, for example, in this case, negative 49, it will give you a no real solution. Okay, no real solution. So this is an example of a quadratic equation of the form x squared equals k, but k is less than 0. So ito po, k is less than 0 because it is negative. Okay, so negative number. If that will be the case, if k is less than 0 or negative number, the answer is always no real solution. So more example on solving quadratic equation by extracting square roots. So example number 1, suppose we want to solve the given quadratic equation x squared minus 2 equals 23 by extracting the square root. X squared minus 2 equals 23. Transpose negative 2 to the right. So what will happen to negative 2? Mag-change ang sign, magiging positive 2. So you are given x squared equals 23 plus 2. Then combine similar terms by adding 23 and 2. So x squared equals 25. Then after that, you get the square root of both sides. So we are given square root of x squared and the square root of 25 will give us x equals plus or minus the square root of 25. But we know square root of 25, if we get the square root of that, is 5. But since you are given two solutions, so you are given plus or minus 5. So again, this is an example of a quadratic equation of the form x squared equals k, but greater than 0. So ang 25 po is greater than 0. So expected na natin na dalawa ang solutions nito. Okay? So next example. Example number 2, suppose we want to solve the given quadratic equation x plus 5 squared equals 100 by extracting the square roots. Alright, so we have here the solution. The given is x plus 5 squared equals 100. So you are given x plus 5 equals the square root of 100 because we get the square root of both sides. Okay? So when we say we get the square root of both sides, it means ito po yan. Kinuha natin yung square root nito at ito. And you just cancel the exponent 2 and then the index 2. So you have x plus 5. And the square root of 100, of course, is 10. So you are given x plus 5 equals plus or minus 10. Then, you transpose positive 5 to the right side. So, ang mangyayari doon, magiging siyang negative 5 plus or minus 10. Then, combine similar terms, but this time, you are given plus or minus. So, hahatiin natin ang region sa dalawa. One for positive and one for negative. So, ito muna ang unahin natin. So, x equals negative 5 plus 10. Okay? Then we know negative 5 plus 10 is positive 5. Okay? Should be positive 5. Alright? Then after that, we use the second sign. You are given x equals negative 5 minus 10. Okay? And then you are given x equals negative 15 because negative 5 minus 10 will give you a negative 15. I-add mo lang sila kasi parehas ang symbol or signs nila. So add mo lang and copy the common sign. So the answers or the solutions are 5 and negative 15. Or the values of x are 5 and negative 15. Let's try to have example number 3. Suppose we want to solve the given quadratic equation x minus 14 squared equals 1 by extracting the square root. The given is x minus 14 squared equals 1. The best way is to square or to get the square root of both sides. So the square root of x minus 14 squared is x minus 14. You just eliminate this. So you are given x minus 14. And you get the square root of 1, so you are given the square root of 1. But we know that the square root of 1 is 1. So just remove the radical sign, so we have plus or minus 1. So you are given x minus 14 equals plus or minus 1. And then you need to transpose this to the other side. Okay? So from negative 14, magiging siyang positive 14. So x equals 14 plus or minus 1. And then we are going to combine similar terms and divide naman natin yung regions into two parts para sa positive at sa negative sign. So you are given x equals 14 plus 1. And we know, this is elementary, x equals 15. And then for the negative side, we have x equals 14 minus 1. And we know 14 minus 1 is 13. So the values of x are 15 and 13. Or you can say the solutions are 15 and 13. Let's try to have example number 4. We want to solve the given quadratic equation m squared plus 16 equals 7 by extracting the square roots. M squared plus 16 equals 7. We transpose 16 to the right. So from positive 16, magiging siyang negative 16. So we have now m squared equals 7 minus 16. And we know 7 minus 16 is negative 9. Alright? And after that, get the square root of both sides. So kung kukunin mo yung square root nito, so you are given n equals the square root of negative 9. Then, our answer will be no real solution. But the question is, why? Because here, negative 9 is less than 0. Or the number inside the radical sign is a negative number. So the answer is always no real solution. Now, sa calculator, as I've said, if you type that, ang lalabas po doon ay syntax error or you say math error. Okay? Because you cannot get the square root of negative number. So, yan. In x squared equals k, if k is less than 0, then there is no real solution. Palagi pong ganun siya. Alright, example number 5. Elisa says that the solutions of the quadratic equation or equations w squared equals 144 and w squared plus 144 equals 0 are the same. The question is, do you agree with Elisa or you disagree with Elisa? So justify your answer. They are not the same because the solutions for w squared equals 144 are negative 12 and positive 12. While in the equation w squared plus 144 equals 0, there is no real solution. So, ano yun? Di ba ang w squared equals 144? If you get the square root of that, meron kang w equals plus or minus 12. So, ito po kasi is greater than 0 or k is greater than 0. That's why we have two solutions. Whereas, w squared plus 144, which is equal to 0, what we are going to do is to transpose positive 144 to the other side. So, anong mangyayari doon sa sign? So, we are given negative 144. And if you are going to get the square root of both sides, and we get the square root of negative 144, that would be no real solution. Okay? It seems kasi that negative 144 is equal to k, which is less than 0. And kapag ang k is less than 0, there is no real solution. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and participating. I hope you learned something. So this is solving quadratic equation by extracting the square root. Goodbye and God bless. Keep safe.